this is your last chance. After this, there is no turning back. You take the blue pill. The story ends. You wake up in your bed and believe whatever you want to. You take the red pill. You stay in Wonderland. And I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes.
Well, welcome to Red Pill Nation, Daily Dose of Reality. I'm your host, Nathan Davis. Sorry for the hour delay. We were out trying to get the last components for my 3-year-old's costume for Halloween tomorrow. And so yeah, then I got home and yeah, we had some issues with the internet, so it took a little bit longer than I thought to get everything set up. Been out all day, so really I have very little to report on. Been kind of catching up here in the last half an hour about what's been going on today in the news. And I found a few articles. First off is Facebook is testing software to track your cursor on screen. Which means that basically they're trying to, which they're doing it supposedly to see where you are, what you're clicking on, what your interests are, so they can specific the advertising to you. This is a dangerous thing, though. It can be misused. I mean, they could, watch what you're clicking on, and if you click on the wrong thing, who knows? You might have the NSA knocking on your door. What is going on with our, with this? And yes, I understand that it's free and it comes with the territory. Unfortunately, I'm somebody that has to be up there on there for several groups that I run. But I'm trying to push away from Facebook as much as possible. I do post a lot of articles and stuff that I find because I want to inform people. I think it's important, and that's a good forum to inform people. There's so many people at your disposal that you can inform. Unfortunately, it's just going down the road of becoming a branch of the NSA where they can spy on you more and more. And that's a scary thing. Our government totally has too much power. And it's sad that there's so many people that want to give it more. Another article talked about the fact that this comedian set up a fake, where was that? Body scanner to enter a candy store. Surprisingly, people went through it to enter this candy store. And instead of questioning the reason why they have to go through a body scanner and be submitted to radiation to enter a candy store. This just shows the submissive attitude people have in this country. They're willing to go through body scanners, submit themselves to a dose of radiation for no reason. As I reported on Monday, the TSA accidentally admitted that really there's no real threat that they can perceive for airports or aviation of any sort. That the majority of the homeland terrorist groups that they're tracking are into propaganda and fundraising. And which is just funny, that we have to be submitted to either being fondled or being irradiated for no reason at this point. There's just no more common sense, it seems like, in this country. If you're willing to go through a body scanner for no freaking reason, there's something wrong. There's something wrong. And I wanted to talk tonight about this movie I watched, and it came out earlier this year. And it's called Now You See Me. And I know I'm transitioning weird, but I watched this movie called Now You See Me. And I hadn't read up on this movie. I hadn't read about the symbolism in this movie, and it struck me. The movie was, I'm sure, confusing to people that don't, keep up on certain conspiracies, but it was a good outline of what's going on. If you don't know anything about that, it would be like, I don't understand anything about this movie. It would be a confusing plot line. And I don't want to give away too much, because I think that if you haven't seen it, you should go and see it, or rent it at this point. I rented it off of Amazon Prime, and usually I don't rent movies. But I rented this movie, and I was just blown away. I mean, you have this organization called The Eye, and it's seeking out these magicians to go through a type of ritual. Basically, they have to do what this organization that they don't know anything about, they have to do what they tell them in order to learn real magic. And a lot of people, after I watched it, I went online and read a lot of the stuff that was being said about it, that a lot of this had to do with the entertainment industry. And it was depicting how a lot of these people are roped into the belief that if they do what they're told by their handlers, they will gain some sort of, knowledge or power or something. And you do see a lot of Illuminati or occult symbolism in music nowadays. Now, that could be because, realistically, these musicians are feeding off of the conspiracy theorists and their arguments, or there could be really something to it. Because this goes back to, Tupac's day. Even Tupac talked about the Illuminati and the occult being inside the rap industry. So that was really before a lot of people knew about this. That was before really the internet was, what it is today. You didn't have YouTube. You didn't have all these different avenues to learn about these things. So even back then there was talk about the Illuminati. Now, whatever that is, I mean, it may not be called that, but it's more of an elite group, and they're pulling the strings. They're pulling the strings of the media. The news that you watch on TV is corporately backed. So they're doing whatever their handlers tell them to do because, they're afraid of being fired. And that reminds me, I don't know if I brought that up, but there was a reporter from, was it CNN? Who made a comment about the Obama administration and was basically threatened to be fired if she, went further with any kind of bad-mouthing. And that's authoritative, in nature. You don't do that. I mean, the freedom of the press, they should be able to say whatever they want about the president, even negative stuff. And here, they're being threatened with being fired if they make any type of allegations or assertions or anything of that nature, have any negative words to say about the president. Of course, you don't see that with Fox, but that happened back during the Bush administration, because you need to have this one side versus the other. Fox is the false rights news station, and CNN and MSNBC are the less news organizations. And you see the flip-flop. You see where they knock Bush for the same things that they praise Obama for. And it doesn't make sense unless you look at it from a bigger picture. If you pull back and you look at it, you start to see that really it's the system and how it's set up, and they want it to be that way. And, I don't know if the Illuminati or anything like that exists. There are conspiracy theorists out there that say there is an organization called the Illuminati. I think there is an elite group. You can call them whatever you want, but they're pulling strings, and they may be influencing certain artists to play along with the promise of some type of power. And not necessarily like, lightning bolts flying out of your fingers, but, some sort of power or clout within, the world, within the New World Order. So, it sounds like a big conspiracy theory. And when you look into it, and you look at all these different things, and the fact that you do have a lot of influence coming from these actors and musicians, it makes a little bit more sense. And especially when they're used a lot as distractions from what's going on in the political arena. Many people were worried about what Miley Cyrus was doing and not caring what, was going on with Obama and Congress. So it can be used as a distractionary measure for our government. And I'm reading up on a lot of the different aspects of these occult groups and their history, and just trying to see if there is some sort of realism or reality to this aspect of what people come up with, these conspiracies. And we do know that there is the Bilderberg Group. It's not a conspiracy. The Bilderberg Group has a website. They advertise in the paper, the local paper, of where they're having their meetings. And I'm reading now a book by Mark Dice called Illuminati Fact or Fiction. And while I might not agree with everything he says in the book, there was one passage in the book that I just recently read where that talked about the Bilderberg Group. And in 2007, and this is confirmed because there was a guy named Jim Tucker. He used to go to all the Bilderberg meetings. He died this year, unfortunately. And he did this for 28 years, I think, or longer. And he would go to the different Bilderberg meetings, and he had insiders. He would pay the wait staff of these hotels, because they would meet in hotels in different locations. They had one here in Virginia, Northern Virginia, I think near Fairfax. And so he would go there, and he'd pay the wait staff, and he'd pay different people to listen in to what was being said. And in 2007, they were actually discussing offing or executing, assassinating Ron Paul, because he was a big threat to them. He was a big threat to the establishment and their plans. And that speaks volumes, for those people that didn't like Ron Paul or thought Ron Paul was, there are so many different conspiracies that came up. There was other things about the racist papers that really he didn't have any affiliation to. Yes, he was the funder of these papers, but he didn't really write them. And he had ghostwriters for a lot of it, because he was doing so many different things at the time. And that's always been thrown in his face. Something that came out 20-plus years ago, and, when he gets up on the podium and talks about, the illegal drug war being racist because the majority of people in jail are black, and the majority of arrests are for minorities. But anyway, they wanted to off him, and that shows that he wasn't an insider. He was not inside the establishment. He didn't, cohort with them. He really wanted to stop these things, and he may not go along with the conspiracies and things like that. He goes with the root stuff, and I think that's important. I think that even if you have all these conspiracies in mind, and you know that all this stuff is true, you can't go at people and tell them, hey, the Illuminati's real and this is what they're doing, because they're going to look at you like you got three heads. You have to come at it with the rudimentary stuff, the very baseline stuff, like the Federal Reserve, explaining fractional, reserve banking. Explain these different things in very rudimentary levels, because they're not accustomed to that. They're not attuned to that. They're asleep to all this stuff going on. And don't get into any kind of conjecturous argument. Keep it onto the facts and keep it baseline. If you keep it very basic, simple, you will wake more people up than if you go into all this other stuff. But with the Bilderberg Group, let people know about that, because that's not a conspiracy. They do have a website. They do advertise. They do meet at hotels. There's video of these elites meeting at these hotels. There's video of some of the speeches. There's documentation of the speeches. Jim Tucker, I want to read his book from 2005 where he goes over the different years. It's called the Bilderberg Diaries, I think. And he goes over every year what happened, what they talked about. And in 2007, that was one of the things that was talked about. That was one of the things that he was informed that they were talking about. And he was very good, because he would get lists of the people that attended. Obama was one of the ones that attended. Mitt Romney, in the same, election year, attended these Bilderberg meetings. Of course, not together. Then you have in 2008 the incident with Hillary and Obama. They got on a plane and they disappeared for 3 days. And the thing of it was, and this is very, weird, is they took all the press and they went. And they got on one plane. They told him that's what the plane that Obama was getting on. And Obama's first press secretary was on the plane, and he said, "I'm sorry, Obama's not going to be on the plane. I do apologize." And at that point they had already closed the doors and were taxiing down the runway when he explained that Obama wasn't on the plane. And then for 3 days the press couldn't find him or Hillary. And this is the same time that the Bilderberg meeting was going on. And they were on the roster as people that were attending. So, that's one group that there's no if, and, or but. It does exist. Bohemian Grove, that's in California, Northern California. They have a cult type ceremony every summer. And Alex Jones made a documentary where he snuck in. He was one of the very few people that actually brought footage out of these ceremonies, because they're very well guarded. They have people blocking the roads off with armed guards. I mean, they don't let people in. If you get too close, they'll, take a swing at you. These cops will. It's very well guarded. And you see this ritual, and it's basically where they are burning a effigy of a human form as a sacrifice to this owl god. And it's a stone owl. It looks like it was naturally formed, that they have there, and they have this ceremony at its base, and it's supposed to give protection and aid them in the next year for these small minority of people, like 2,000 people that attend. And it's kind of disturbing, because some of these people are political figures. And the problem with this is also that these meetings are not something that should take place. You should not have political figures meeting with rich people, rich elite, to discuss matters of politics, because that's influence on them. There is laws against that. You're not supposed to give special priority to people. You're not supposed to discuss inside information to private figures. And this happens all the time. And but yeah, that's another thing that I think a lot of people need to be aware of, is that these things do exist. There is evidence that shows that there is some kind of sinister nature to what's going on. But you have to be careful with people that don't read it, don't believe it, even though there is factual evidence to support it. Yeah, it's one of those things like 9/11. There's factual evidence to support that our government allowed at the base, the bare minimum, our government allowed it to happen. They want to accept the official story. It's kind of like JFK. Now, about 80% of people believe that there was some kind of conspiracy with it. But a lot of them wanted to believe the Warren Commission. They wanted to believe that what was being brought forward was true. And History Channel, I really lost a lot of respect for them when they started taking and going after these conspiracies and breaking them apart. And not doing a good job at it anyway. I mean, they with 9/11, they used a lot of computer models that still didn't explain a lot of stuff. Why a titanium engine would just disappear. I mean, they're talking about the plane just broke apart as it went through the building. Well, titanium is very strong, and it would hit the building and go through to some degree. It didn't. And there was no engine parts found on the exterior of the building. Building 7, they really couldn't explain. They did a cheesy computer graphic of it, but it really didn't explain how it came down with only 2 floors burning, and a plane never hit it. There was no extensive structural damage to World Trade Center 7. So it seems like they are trying to cover up what's going on. And I know it sounds bizarre. It sounds like, geez, you just want the people in the government to be the bad guys. And that's not true. I want them to be the good guys. I want them to work for us. But they're not. And at the bare minimum, without looking at any conspiracies at all, or even if they have actual information, let's not even look at those. Let's look at the bare minimum. They're being paid off by corporate interest. And that was proven when the ruling came down that corporations are equal to people. When that came through, so many people should have realized that the interest that they're for is not the people, the constituents that they're supposed to work for. It's the corporate interests. They're not a flesh and blood body, but they have been given the same rights as you when it comes to campaign contribution, when it comes to campaign influence. And they have more because they have more money. Now, I'm not against the CEO of a company giving to a candidate. That's fine. But not a corporation, not the corporation itself. Should we put campaign caps? I think so. I think that we should have stringent caps on campaign contributions. And the reason is that if you have people giving large sums, they become highly influential. And we have to return to a very integral voting system, a very integral campaigning system. We don't have that right now. The voting system doesn't have any integrity because of the touchscreen voting system. Because of what happened in 2000 in Florida, they started implementing the touchscreen voting systems. When they did that, the guy said, hey, look, this system there's no backup. You can tamper with the results very easily, and I don't know why you're implementing it. You could touch your vote for one candidate, candidate A, and they could have it set up in reverse, knowing that in your area, candidate A is going to be more popular, but they want candidate B. They could switch that So when you click candidate A, you're actually voting for B. And it will tally that way, but it will tell you something else. And then there's no backup. With paper, you have a backup. And they're doing away with paper ballots across the country. And then when where you have paper ballots, now if you look at the 2012 GOP nomination, Maine, I think, is a good example because there were several counties that the votes just disappeared. They were loaded on a truck for some reason. They weren't tallied there. They were loaded on a truck, and the truck just never arrived at the tallying center. And then you had other areas that were shut down that were very Ron Paul friendly that were shut down in Maine because of the threat of a snowstorm that never happened. And people wonder, and sit there and say, oh, that's just a coincidence. Is it a coincidence that in South Carolina...
This is your last chance. After this, there is no turning back. You take the blue pill. The story ends. You wake up in your bed and believe whatever you want to. You take the red pill. You stay in Wonderland. And I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes.
Conspiracy. Come on, people, wake up. I mean, it's in your face every day that they are not for your interest. And when you take and you funnel power to the top, this is what you get. You get crony capitalism. You get corruption. Hell, in Russia, you got crony communism. Communism on paper sounds great. But when you put people in power over it, they're going to give themselves kickbacks. They're going to, funnel money and power to the top. They're going to live high off the hog while you starve. Look at North Korea. It's a prime example of what's going on here. Just in a very extreme example, because they live lavishly. Kim Jong-un lives lavishly, while his people starve, but they still are forced to praise him. Now, we're not there yet, but we're going down that road. The divide between the 1% and the 99% is growing. And yes, I didn't agree with the Occupy movement because they didn't have a clear message. They didn't know what they were out there for. They just were beating on drums and chanting and had no clue, of why they were there. They were asked a number of times, why are you here? We're working on our message. We've got a council. Okay, well, you don't gather and then, all right, why did we gather? No, you have a point to gathering. You have a reason. You have an objective for why you gathered there. But they didn't. That's why I didn't really have much respect for that movement, because it was just a bunch of people living on the streets, urban camping, with no message. And really not understanding that it's not just the banks that's the problem, it's the connection between the banks and the government and the markets, all these type of interconnecting, interweaving problems. The government should not be intertwined in the market. It should not be intertwined like that. It shouldn't be intertwined in the banking system. We owe the banks because of the Federal Reserve. The Federal Reserve is there, and they, buy treasury bonds, pumping new currency into the system and selling it to the government on interest. And when you sell something on interest, and really you're using the currency, you're creating the currency and selling it to the government, you're never going to have enough currency to pay off the total loan, because the interest is more than the total amount of currency in the system. But that's that's not a conspiracy. That's nothing. That's that doesn't matter, because raising the debt ceiling doesn't raise the debt, and the debt's really not that high, even though it's like, if you modeled it, it'd be huge, bigger than the Statue of Liberty, if you stacked this money up. It doesn't make sense when people sit there and argue about things and they really do not know what's going on. But when you approach them, do not get in their face. Don't call them stupid. Don't call them ignorant. Don't call them zombies. Don't call them all that stuff, because you're never going to get through to them if you do that. Come at them with understanding. You may or may not have been that person at one point. You may or may not have been asleep. But come at them with understanding that they know there's things going on, but they're living their life. And if you're a libertarian, a constitutionalist, or anything like that, you have to have the understanding that it's an individual right to live their life the way they want. What we're trying to do is protect the ignorant. It's true. Protect the ignorant from themselves sometimes, and you don't do that through the government. That's the problem. The ignorant think the government can protect them. No, the government takes advantage of their ignorance. So the way we protect the ignorant is by saying, no, that's not the way to do that. And give them other archetypes for solutions. Say, look, I understand why you want to have national health care. I understand why you want to have single-payer health care. You want to provide health care for everybody. And that's a good moral standing. I agree wholeheartedly that people need health care. But I differ in my view from you about the solution. I think that we should deregulate the borders between states. Allow more competition in. The more competition you have in a market, it drives costs down. Because you don't want to be the one with the most expensive product, because you're not going to last long. And you don't want to be the one with the worst product, because you won't last long. Market competition regulates itself. Let greed work for us. That's a very, basic thing. People are going to be greedy. You cannot regulate greed away. People are going to be greedy. You put regulations there, well, we're going to figure a way of getting around it or through it. Allow the greed to work for you by creating more competition. Do not allow them to regulate out the competition in their area. There's so many states that don't have proper health insurance because of the regulations of their state. It regulates a lot of the competition out. And so adding more regulation on top of it is going to exacerbate the problem. And it's going to give the control to the insurance companies because, okay, well, I have to make premium costs the same as for somebody that has a pre-existing condition to somebody that's healthy. Okay, well, we're going to raise the rates for the healthy people so we can raise the rates for those that have pre-existing conditions. Now, they may not be able to do it for 2014. They say, oh, we're going to lock it in at this rate. 2015 hits, boom, they go up. I watched, was it yesterday? Day before? Yesterday. What's her name? Taverner. She's the CMS head. She heads up basically the Medicare, Medicaid part for the Health and Human Services Agency. And the Congress was interviewing her. The only thing that she could say is that we were going to have those results by mid-November. And it was just infuriating because the only thing the Democrats did was stand up and just, shame the Republicans, saying, how dare you attack this bill, this law. And the Republicans, they were asking most of the hard questions about why is this website not working? Why is this such a big failure? Why can't you give us information now? I mean, a lot of the information was not given them because they just refused. She refused to give the information. She said that, we'll have it, the statistics, November, the middle part of November. Why weren't you prepared? Well, I think that was planned. We're going to make sure we don't have these statistics until after the congressional hearings. And then we can kind of, mess with the numbers and make them look better than they are. That's the problem. Here this woman was up there and she was gloating about this, and it was just so infuriating. You have one of them, I can't remember his name. He just stood up and just said, shame on you Republicans. How dare you attack the blah, 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 blah. And you're not providing health care. You're taking health care from people that have pre-existing conditions. You don't care about the people. And the Republicans are like, it's just that we have a difference on the solution. We don't think this is the solution. And while I don't agree with how the Republicans' mindsets are, these neocons, these phony, right conservatives, they're not really conservatives because they want bloated government, but for their interests. But for this, I mean, it was just nothing came of this other than the Democrats just sitting there shaming the Republicans, the Republicans basically going, why can't you give us any information? I mean, the hearing was, I think, 2 or 3 hours long. 3 hours long. And really, you didn't learn much from it. I mean, they asked the same questions over and over again, but wouldn't get a proper response. I mean, they were like, I don't understand. You come here and you don't have any information to give us. And so she sat up there for 3 hours, basically rehashing the same statements. We won't have anything until the middle part of November. So it was just a bizarre hearing. It was just one of those things that was, for TV, making it look like they're doing something when really, if you look at it, you didn't learn anything about the problems with the website and the problems with Obamacare. Other than this woman adamantly supports it and thinks it's going to work, and so do so many of the Democrats. This is going to work. When everything else is speaking otherwise. Analysts, economists, everybody is saying it ain't going to work. People that have been in the insurance industry for years saying it ain't going to work. You're going in the wrong direction to solve the problem. You're compounding it. And that's what they don't get. Or they do, and they're pushing socialism on us so they can make us a totalitarian state, an authoritative state, headed up by a dictatorial head that's picked by a phony voting system. Oh, that's just conjecture. There's no fact behind that, right? Yeah, true. Yeah. There's plenty of facts to prove that. There's plenty of facts to show that our voting system is fraudulent. There's plenty to show that they keep funneling power to the top because democracy does that. Democracy does not cap power. A republic does. And that's what people don't understand. They think, when they hear republic, they think of socialist republic. No, federal republic. Difference. Big difference. The reason our founding fathers wanted that kind of federal government was because it capped power. It kept it down. It stopped it from flowing to the top. And now we have a mushroom cloud of agencies. It's like there's no power in the county and state level, and all the power's at the top. It looks like a freaking, atomic blast with the powers. And really, I think at the county levels, if we could find ways at the county and state levels, to block federal, intrusion on their powers, we could get back to a more sound government. People keep shying away from that because, of segregation laws, which were not in every state. I've said this before. If the federal government had a segregation law, you'd still have segregation issues in this country because it would be hard to get rid of. Within the states that had those laws, within 20 years, they were gone. Totally. Even if they were against it, it didn't matter. The court's decision was upheld. And that's what I don't get. People think that funneling the power away from them is going to give them more security. It takes away your freedoms. It takes away your rights. It takes away your liberties. It takes away the ability to hold your representatives accountable. Write one of your representatives in the House of Representatives or the Senate and see if they write you back. See if they even read it. They won't. They get 10,000, emails a day, if not more. You're a small drop in the bucket. You are, not that important. But if you go to the county level and you write one of your representatives, there's more of a chance that you will be heard because they get maybe 100 emails a day. Or letters or whatever. And the other thing is you can go right up to their office, knock on the door, and go in and talk to them. You can't do that at the Senate, at the Capitol. You can, but most of the times they won't meet with you. That's the problem. We have so much funneling of power up to the top, and then people complain. People don't... 18, what was it? It's a small percentage, probably in the single digits now, that people don't trust Congress. They don't, Obama has the lowest approval rating of any president, but yet they want to keep giving them more power. They want to keep giving them more control over their lives. And it's like, are you insane? How does this make sense? Take control, take responsibility for yourself. That's how we solve problems. We take responsibility for ourselves. We say, you know what, it's my life. I'm going to take control of it. I'm going to own my life. I'm not going to pawn it off onto somebody else. There's so many people that want to pawn their life onto somebody else. Yes, there are people that need help. But there's other ways of helping them. There's other solutions. Than government involvement. If you want government involvement and everybody's in on it at the county level and the state level, then that's fine. But not at the federal level. When you have that much power with so small amount of people. I mean, you look at the amount of people in the federal government as far as the core of elected officials. I'm not talking about all the agencies, the core of elected officials. It's not a lot of people. Less than 1,000 people. Elected officials within the federal government. And you want to give that many people control over 350 million people's lives. And that's what it is. I mean, we're doing healthcare, we're doing so much at the top, and we're $17 trillion in debt. But that doesn't matter. Let's make it 18. Let's make it 20. Let's make it 30. Let's make it 40. It doesn't matter, to the average person. They don't see it that way. They don't see that it's a problem. And that's just mind-boggling to me. I mean, $17 trillion in debt, and let's give them more, stuff to control and put us further into debt that we'll never be able to pay off, to a banking system that doesn't supply us enough currency to pay them off in the first place. If we took all the currency that's in our country that's been printed and give it back to the Federal Reserve, we'd still owe them. And that makes sense. On what planet? Not Earth. But there's so many space cadets out there that are running everything. And then you get into the fact that it's more than likely planned to be that way because they're forcing globalization on us. They want centralized power of the world, not just a country. They want to take sovereignty away from all nations, create a global government. Now you have 6 billion people under the control of a small conglomerate. Even if you include the UN, it's a small conglomerate compared to, the number of people in the world. But then we'll have a currency that'll have less debt attached to it. So we can keep printing more and more money, and eventually, we'll tap that out too. But that doesn't matter. It'll be further down the road on our kids. Who cares? We won't be alive. Ha 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 ha! That's how they think. They want control. They want power. They funnel it to the top. While we suffer, inflation's a tax on us because we are affected more by the inflation on gas and the inflation on food. 6%. Inflation on food is a big deal to the middle class and the poor. To somebody that has billions of dollars at their disposal, it's nothing. Nothing. People need to wake up. I mean, really need to wake up. And I think that, those that listen to this show, or, people in general that are awake, you need to learn, and I know it's hard, not to take and make it a personal attack. Learn to debate. Learn to keep it on the topic. Even if that person is making it a personal argument, don't go there. Don't let it affect you. Don't let it get to you. Keep to your guns. Stick to your guns, and you may make an impact. You may chisel away at the armor of that person's, sleep tent. I don't know what you want to call it, but you'll chisel away at them, and you'll get them to realize. You'll wake them up. You'll open their eyes to the reality that they're being lied to. I think it's funny. I had one friend sit there and tell me, "Oh God, Fox News is so horrible. They're nothing like CNN and MSNBC. They're horrible. Have you watched Outfoxed, that documentary? Oh, it just shows how bad they are." I said, they're all that way. It's just not, Fox News. They're all controlled by, 5 corporations. And I said, if you watched a documentary that showed MSNBC and CNN are run the same way, would you stop watching them? And she didn't really answer, but it showed me that people are conditioned to take sides. They're conditioned to believe that there is, this political war going on, and it's a false war. It's a war of the same ideas. I mean, really, if you listen to the arguments, there's very little difference between the two sides. People don't want to hear that, and they go, "Oh no, that's not true." It is. Listen to what they're arguing. It's not a lot of difference. I mean, really, they're not. I mean, the Republicans, the conservatives are not talking about taking an axe to the budget. They're coming out with, a pair of small scissors and attacking it. And the Democrats are just saying, no, we don't want to do that. There's just very little difference. The Republicans are attacking the incremental increases to the budget. The Democrats are like, no, don't attack that 6%. That's not going to make much of a difference. $1 trillion in 10 years, the Paul Ryan budget. That's what it was attacking, was the incremental increases. It was not attacking any of the spending that's already there. So, $1 trillion in 10 years when you have a budget that is still $1 trillion over budget, a $1 trillion deficit, close to. You haven't attacked that, but you have kept it there for 10 years. So you can say you saved us $1 trillion in 10 years. That's not doing anything. That's still not attacking the fact that we're adding that much to the debt annually. They're close to it. Whether it's, 800 billion or $1 trillion, you're still close to every year adding $1 trillion to the debt. No, but that's not true. And that's the thing, is that people that are asleep are just so funny. They don't want to debate. They don't want a rational debate. They always go to the personal attack. I've talked to so many people, and the first thing that happens is right when you disagree with them, they go into a personal attack. And you have to learn to not fire back, because when you do that, you've lost them. If you either ignore it or go, let's stick to the topic here, or something like that, then you might get through to them. But the moment you start calling them names, or saying you're a zombie, you don't know what you're talking about, you've lost them, and they're going to remain asleep, and they're going to remain somebody that's going to be someone you'll have to go up against in the future, because we're getting to a point where we're going to see a lot more protests. We're going to see a lot more civil unrest. We're going to see a lot more of these things, and the people that are going to be the biggest threat are the unprepared masses, the grasshoppers. I'm not talking about, I'm talking about the ant and the grasshopper. The ant stored everything for winter and said, look, you need to prepare. You need to be ready. Winter's coming. Winter's coming. The grasshopper's just out there lounging. Whatever. I've got time. And then winter comes, and the grasshopper starves. But he's going after the ant, He's trying to get to his food. He's trying to get to what he saved up, because the ant was prepared. And now the grasshopper that he kept warning is now the one that's the threat. And so when the proverbial you-know-what hits the fan, those are the ones that are going to be the threat to you, because they know that you're the one that's been sitting there saying this is going to happen. And they disagreed with you. They denied what you were saying. They didn't prepare. They didn't store up. They spent their money crazily. And now they're coming after you. So be mindful of that when you're talking to them. Work with, logical arguments. Work with factual arguments. Work with the topic, not the person. Work on what they're saying. Look at what they're saying. Look in between the lines. Look in between the personal attacks and find what they're talking about, and then use facts to attack those arguments, not the person. And then you might wake them up. It's funny, though, that the people I debate, like libertarians and stuff, and that's just the thing is that people say, well, you know, you're part of a collectivist group. You're a libertarian. Yes, but we don't all agree. We will openly debate. We will openly, discuss things. I mean, in Virginia right now, there's, the governor election coming up. And you have libertarians that are going for Cuccinelli, who's a Republican. You have others that are going for Sarvis, who's the libertarian candidate. I want to go for Sarvis. I don't think he'll win. But I think that will give it, hopefully, if we can get a high enough percentage, I think it's 10-15%, we could get ballot access for the next election. And I do agree with him on a number of issues. I don't think he is as... I think there's certain things about him that aren't libertarian, but that's anybody. I mean, you could point to anybody and say, you're not a perfect libertarian. Well, libertarians, it's a very broad aspect. It's more of a, ideology that, to produce the most freedoms with the least amount of harm. And you get more harm when you do it through the government. And that's what we keep telling people. But there is infighting, and it's not a personal attack. Most of the arguments I've seen about this they don't go into personal attack. They're debating the issues. They're actually debating the issues. They're not attacking one another going, you don't know what you're talking about, you're not true libertarian. No, they're attacking the issues. They're actually having civil debates. You get a Republican and a Democrat together, they just butt heads. And if you get a Republican and a Republican together, they agree. Oh, Romney. Oh, he's so great. You get two Democrats together. Obama. Yay! There's nothing there. And I mean, all the Republicans are going to vote for Cuccinelli. All the Democrats are going to vote for... what the heck is his name? Max something. Just had a brain. You know what? Let's see. McAuliffe. I couldn't think of his name. So you're going to have Democrats voting for him, and you're going to have Republicans voting for Cuccinelli, and there's not really going to be, much going from one side to the other. And it's just a baseline. That's what you do because he's part of your party. You're a party member, so you vote for that party's candidate. Doesn't matter if you like him or not, you vote for him. And with the Libertarians, not all of them are going to vote for Sarvis because, they don't agree with his stances, and that's perfectly fine. Within the Libertarian Party, we are a party of individuals. We're not a party of party members. We understand that each individual's, concepts, and we respect each individual, not only that is a card-carrying libertarian, that's part of the actual party, but denotes themselves as a libertarian. That's not... there's libertarians out there that are not card-carrying libertarians. They're not part of the party that's out there. They're just somebody that, identifies as libertarian. And we accept them, too. They can come to the conferences. They can come to whatever. I mean, they don't have to be a card-carrying member. That's the difference. RNC and all that. Do you have your card? No. Get out of here. No, if you're, libertarian, okay. You identify with that, that's fine. Because we see each individual as being a contribution to the whole. We see each individual as an American citizen, as important, not as a number. First, we're a Social Security number, then, we have a party number. We're number blah, 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 blah. I don't live my life like that. And so, there for a long time I went through life going as an independent. I voted for different parties. I never voted for the established parties. And the more and more I read about libertarianism, when I found Ron Paul and watched the debates, and I was blown away by the common sense that this man spewed, I decided, you know what? I'm libertarian, because I've been saying a lot of that for a long time, without even knowing, that that's what it was. And I think that that's the main thing, is libertarianism is common sense, in a lot of ways. It's common sense on the law. It's not something where, and constitutionalism and all that. There's constitutionalists, there's all these different ones. I don't agree with certain aspects of constitutionalists and their socialist policies, because I don't see them as constitutional, but I think that a lot of the third parties are going towards the same goal. Even the liberal parties are saying that the established parties are not going in the right direction. The Green Party and some of the other ones, they're saying, look, that we need more diversity in the political scene. And the fact is that most people do not know that these third parties exist. They only get information about the Democrats and the Republicans. And then you have those that sit there and hold the banner of, we only need two parties, because they're afraid of what it'll do to their party. They're afraid of the fact that it'll take votes from them. That's what they're afraid of. They're not. That's the base argument. But you had our first president sitting there warning against that. I believe in his inaugural address, warning against party creation, warning against, an oligarchy of parties. And that's what we have. We have two parties that pretty much are running everything. You have, I think, two independent, maybe one. Is it one or two independents in the House of Representatives? Over 250 some members, and you have two that are independent. And the majority of people just do not know, because what runs everything is campaign funds. Huge sums of money. Cloud out, anybody that has a campaign under, $100 million. Or that's probably low now. But, and that's the thing, is we got to get around these collectivist ideals. I made this argument to somebody. He said, well, collectivism isn't bad as a whole. And I said, no, but, a totalitarian collectivist state, where you have basically people getting together and rallying for a certain idea, not because they understand it, but because the party is getting behind it. That's a danger to society. And that's what we have. How many Democrats have read Obamacare? How many? Probably very few. I bet you a lot of the elected officials didn't even read it. Nancy Pelosi said, don't read it. Vote on it. Then you get to read it. Yeah. And that's a bad thing. That's a really bad thing. How many Republicans read the Patriot Act before voting on it? And the Patriot Act, which was this huge, expansive bill, just about the same size, if not bigger, than Obamacare, mysteriously came out very shortly after 9/11. This huge bill, and people were like, okay, That's odd, because it takes a long time for that large of a legislative policy to be created. It's not something that you come up with within a couple months. It takes years. So it proved they had that in the works before 9/11, and they used 9/11 as basically the platform to release the Patriot Act. They used the deaths of 3,000 plus American people to pass a law. That's pretty sad. And now you have the exploitation of uninsured for Obamacare. And if you're against it, well, you're against people having health insurance. It's like, what? No, I just disagree that that's the answer. It's not. It doesn't work. It's not going to work. I'm sorry. And now we have to live through this horror. We're still living through the Patriot Act. That's the thing. I had actually some Democrats say when I was talking about NDAA and how that stepped on, people's rights, indefinite detention, all that. Oh, you must be talking about the Patriot Act. And I said, oh, well, I guess you didn't know Obama renewed it in 2009. No comment after that. Nobody said anything after that because they're like, oh. They didn't know. Obama, when the Patriot Act was coming up for renewal, renewed it. He didn't throw it out. So we're getting played by both sides. And those that go along with it are puppets to those in power. It's kind of like somebody, and I'm going to use this example because it's a perfect example, listening to a song because they love the beat. They never listen to the words clearly. But they love that beat, man. And eventually they start listening to the words. Or maybe one day they look up the lyrics because they're not clear about what the words are saying, and they find out that it's talking about murdering babies or something horrible that they would be totally against. And they're like, oh my God, I've been listening to this in my car with the windows down, blasting. People are going to identify me, as being somebody for this type of music. And that's the way it is with politics. I mean, people rarely tune into what's really going on. Read what's going on. Really look into what's being said. And then when they find out, then they're like, oh my God, I've been identifying with really some horrible policies. So I'd use that as an analogy. I would sit there and tell people, people that go with the Democrat or Republican side are like people that sit in their car listening to a song because it has a really good beat. They never really listen to the words. They blast it out their windows. They're like, yeah, ooh, doo, 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 doo. And then one day they start listening to the words. Or one day they look up the lyrics. And they're horrified at the reality of it all. If you meet somebody that, needs a really basic analogy, give them that. I bet you that's a really good analogy of how it is. And I'll leave you with that because it is after the hour. And I want to thank you for joining this impromptu show. Yeah, I'm sorry I was an hour late, and I want to say that, today was just a hectic day. I wasn't able to get everything in that I wanted to. I didn't really follow what was going on in the news today very closely because I just had a lot of other stuff going on. So it's been an hour of me on a soapbox talking about all kinds of different things. So thank you for joining me, and have a good night, and have a happy Halloween.